So the second portion of today's meeting will be with no recording, no press, and no transcript. We have scheduled an additional Faculty Senate meeting on September 16th at 3 o'clock so that we may provide adequate notice for faculty members to plan to participate. The September 16th meeting will be more formal, including a pre-registration as a Faculty Senate member, an agenda, action items, and use of an electronic voting platform. Today, there are 13 participants who requested in advance to speak at today's meeting, including 9 of the original petitioners and the current president of the University of Michigan Graduate Employment Organization, the GEO. Each of the presenters will have 3 minutes to make their statement. During the presentation time, the chat function will be open and available for you to freely share your comments with your colleagues in real time. In addition, in the effort to collect feedback from today, a link to a Google form has now been provided in the chat. Know that entries on the Google form will be anonymous. Once all the speakers who requested to speak have finished, participants will be invited to use the hand raise feature in Zoom to express interest in speaking. The SACUA Vice Chair, Annalisa Manera, and the Faculty Senate Office Director, Mary Jo Banasic, will facilitate this part of the meeting. Know that at 3:45, we will take a brief 3-minute screen break, at which time we will stop recording the meeting and we will disable the transcription. The press will also leave the meeting at that time. This is, again, in an effort to make sure that everybody feels comfortable speaking. At this time, I am going to invite our first speaker who signed up, and that is Kentaro Toyama. Kentaro and the rest of the speakers know that I will be waving at the 2-minute mark, and then I'll be introducing the next person at the 3-minute mark. So I invite Kentaro to take the floor.
Thank you, Colleen. So I'm going to start with a bit of recent University of Michigan history. Some of you may not realize that this administration has been demonstrating a pattern of ignoring faculty voices. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the faculty who have been handpicked and co-opted by the leadership. I mean all of us. President Schlissel did not consult with SACUA in the choice of our current provost or the previous one. In fact, he flatly rejected a SACUA request to have a seat on the search committee that nominated Martin Filbert, and we all know how that went. Speaking of Filbert, if you read the Wilmer Hale report about his misconduct, you saw that it was full of references to the Office of Institutional Equity, or OIE. SACUA and other faculty governance bodies have been complaining about OIE for years, and nothing substantive has changed about it. The way I interpret it, OIE seems to care more about preventing lawsuits for the university rather than seeking truth or justice. In fact, I'm aware of at least one case that OIE recently closed after Filbert's dismissal, in which their investigation didn't account for all of the evidence provided by accusers. Likely sexual predator is again off the hook, and if nothing changes, this person will get tenure. Yet another example is a recent change to bylaw 5.09, which concerns dismissal of people who are on the tenure track or tenured. The revision weakened tenure protections and was pushed through against the recommendation of a faculty working group as well as a faculty survey. So there are many such examples. In fact, in my 4 years in faculty governance, I haven't yet seen the administration give an inch on key issues, though they are very good at providing the impression that they care about our opinions. I don't think this is governance, this is dictatorship. And if that seems a little bit alarmist, it's because I really believe we are in a moment in which we have to do something a little bit more than make polite requests. We're just lucky that 90% of the time, what the administration wants is the same as what we want. But in the remaining 10%, we have seen that it can be life or death, as we are now seeing. So with respect to the reopening, over the summer, SACUA officers met multiple times with President Schlissel and Provost Collins. SACUA as a whole has had at least 2 meetings with them over Zoom. There have been at least 3 faculty petitions, 1 petition from staff, 2 from the Ann Arbor community, and a list of demands from graduate students. The World delivered news of large campus closures to residential programs last week, and also last week, for the first time since anyone can remember, there were faculty-led protests at Fleming, which were covered by the local press. None of this so far has led to any substantive changes in policy or transparency with respect to the reopening. In fact, in this week's Michigan Daily, President Schlissel is quoted as saying, "I don't hold myself responsible. It's the virus." Okay, so all of that is to say that I think the moment for polite requests and even somewhat impolite requests is long over, and they're not going to cause the administration to change its mind. So if there's one thing I would like everybody to remember for whatever comes out of this discussion today is I believe we need to go to the next level of action, which would be something on the order of a no confidence vote in either the reopening plans themselves or in the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Kentaro. I will now call Peter Railton. Peter Railton, are you there?
I'm here.
You-
Good. First, many thanks for those of you who organized this meeting and who showed up. I'm speaking today as an individual, not as a member of the Advisory Committee on Ethics. And what I'd like to emphasize here is that I think at this point we're entering a new phase. Some of the most dangerous steps in reopening the university, such as bringing the students back to the dorms, have already been taken. And at this point, it may be too late to stop the spread of the kind that we've seen at other large universities. But we are not powerless as a faculty to take steps that we think can materially increase safety for our students, faculty, staff, and the wider communities. First, I think with students just returning to dorms this week, it simply isn't prudent to increase the risk of transmission by holding in-person classes until we know that the infection is not starting to spread widely in the student population. Let's do this ourselves. We can do it within the framework of hybrid teaching. We can declare that the first weeks of teaching will be remote. We don't have to wait for permission or policy change to do that. And it would dramatically reduce the amount of concentration of students on campus and perhaps the risk of infection. Second, we can demand and play our part in the ramping up of teaching. Others who know more will speak about teaching, I'm sure, but I just want to say that it seems evident that just testing symptomatic individuals and random surveillance testing to learn of the overall infection rate are not adequate to pinpoint outbreaks early enough to intervene and to stop their spread. Other universities have taken initiatives to develop better, faster, and more widespread forms of testing. We can do that, and as a faculty, it's our responsibility to try to make that happen. Third, as the university gets information, it should be shared. The support for better decision-making is the only way for us to hold the university accountable and to make rational choices ourselves and for our students in the community. It's not a coincidence that the University of North Carolina's decision to go remote coincided with the first major report of detailed numbers. As of now, the University COVID dashboard does not provide a detailed breakdown by workplace or residence of infection rates. It does not provide the locations of possible clusters. And this sort of information is essential if people are going to make decisions about what they do and where they do it. Fourth, given the speed at which things can go wrong, we now need to work on a concrete plan for if things go awry, how do we unwind this? It won't do simply to send the students back in a disorganized way as we did in the winter term. If the infection rate on campus is higher than the background rate, what we'll be doing is exporting infection to the wider community, the students' families, and their homes. What we need then is preventive steps and preparation so that we can do the kind of widespread testing and the kind of quarantining that might be very extensive if indeed we have to unwind. Finally, we can demand and play our role in better monitoring and enforcement of essential public health protocols. There have been disturbing reports that during the move-in, these were not observed and that there was no monitoring. How can we expect students to take this seriously if we ourselves don't? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we hear from Dante Amidi. And Dante, you'll have to unmute yourself. We don't have control of the mute.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Colleen. Hi, everyone. I was an organizer of 2 recent open letters to the UM administration on the fall reopening. And since these letters are the voice of many people, I thought it merited a brief review of the discussions in those letters, and then I'll follow that with my own thoughts. Okay, the first letter on July 27th noted that since the reopening could have a serious impact on the public health, that U of M as a public institution should be obligated to present a transparent discussion of the plan and an analysis of the anticipated risk to the community. 1,500 signatures. We saw a schematic plan the following week, and that motivated a second letter on August 7th with 829 signatures, where we highlighted a now widely cited paper that showed, through a model analysis, that the key to virus containment is frequent universal testing and isolation of the infected. We noted that the UM testing plan is substandard to that, and we asked U of M to either show us a countervailing analysis that justified its plan, or to take the governor's advice and call off the mass migration back to campus. What we have heard since then is an ad hoc argument to discredit the importance of universal testing, an argument, unfortunately, whose disingenuity has been widely recognized by many of us and even criticized in the broader press. And the other demand of both letters remains unaddressed. We have never seen a model or an analysis that predicts the risk levels for this plan. Maybe there isn't one and we are flying blind. Or maybe there is one and we wouldn't like the answer. But in either case, as Peter says, here we are, the migration has happened. U of M has acted unilaterally to put the entire community at an unknown or unstated risk with no deliberative strategy, just downstream crisis control. Okay, keep your fingers crossed, hang up your garlic, watch out for cops, wear your mask. And meanwhile, peer institutions like Illinois and MIT, Colby College, are pioneering proactive science-based containment strategies that will establish them as the leaders in the development of methods to confront this and future pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante. We hear next from Silke Weineck.
Colleen, I don't see Silke in the room.
Okay, I'm going to move on then. We'll come back to Silke. Michael Atzman then is next. Unless Silke here. Oh, while they work to unmute Silke.
Silke, you're unmuted.
There you go. You're ready to go, Silke.
Thank you. I think it was possibly because I showed up as SNY rather than under my name. First of all, thank you to Sakya and in particular to Mary Jo and Colleen for facilitating this, I think, biggest Senate meeting in history of UM. That must have been a lot of work on short notice. I'm very grateful. And I'm very happy to see that grassroots faculty governance is actually not dead at Michigan. So earlier this year, President Schlissel appointed an Ethics and Privacy Committee staffed with some of our finest faculty working in those fields, Peter Cavaliers. By June 8th, the committee had produced a careful 35-page report. It is not a set of recommendations, but rather a detailed ethical framework to guide decision-making. This report was made public. On July 31st, however, in a letter to the president, the committee declared its deep concern about the direction the administration had chosen. I quote, "Our main point here is not to advocate for a specific solution, but rather to underscore with urgency our concern that current plans for fall 2020 will not meet the reasonable standard for safety recommended by our report, that good alternatives exist, and that it is not too late to pursue them," or it was not too late in July 31st. In this letter, the committee further stressed that, quote, "We have a special obligation to look out for the most vulnerable. If we create a hotspot, communities of color and other vulnerable populations will be hardest hit. These populations have disproportionately suffered and died from COVID-19 and will bear the greatest burden if overall public health conditions worsen," quote end. In other words, it is not enough to say that Black Lives Matter, we must demonstrate that they matter to us. This letter was not made public, and let me be clear, President Schlissel was under no formal obligation to follow the advice of the committee he appointed. He was under no formal obligation to share this communication, which became public only this week. But these developments are part of a pattern that has grown more pronounced every year. I would call this pattern a theater of consultation, where some of our most knowledgeable colleagues exert tremendous effort to offer guidance, only to see their expertise disregarded. This has been true, as Kantoro mentioned, in the context of the so-called Blue Ribbon Panel, the sexual misconduct policy, the revision of the bylaws, and so on. But this time, it is not merely a matter of misguided policies that will have very little effect on the vast majority of us. It is now literally a matter of life and death, and I'm appalled. Thank you.
Thank you, Silke. Now we'll go to Michael Assman.
Thank you, Colleen and Mary Jo and all of SACUA and everybody who showed up. So denying the pandemic only prolongs the crisis and increases the economic toll. Denial hasn't worked for the US, and now the UN leadership seems to not only be ignoring the conditions around us, but doubling down and prolonging the pandemic. So we understand the enormity of the challenges that the administration is facing. And also humans can make mistakes, but what we see here is a pattern of contempt for common sense, for the intelligence of the community members, and now their lives. The decision on hybrid teaching made many weeks ago has become indefensible. Developments around the country have been ignored. Reality at other universities and now here in town has also been ignored. The administration has not been transparent about its plans. We've already heard about that. And selective information has been shared. For example, the dashboard only contains partial information on infections. The administration's response to a faculty petition requiring, requesting opting out of in-person instruction, the response was a copy of the official policy sent out by the Office of Public Affairs. The petition was not even addressed. Now, on August 18th, President Schlissel said, at this time, there's nothing from public health guidance that suggests we should be conducting widespread testing of asymptomatic individuals. Well, this not only defies common sense, but it's simply incorrect. There have been published recommendations that predated this statement. Now, there are lots of details. I'll just mention a couple. So the U of M still considers age 65 as the threshold for being at risk, but the CDC has long ago abandoned this criterion. The risk of illness and death increases gradually with age. Also, the 6-foot rule is unlikely to be useful in a closed classroom, especially with imperfect masks and their imperfect use. Transmission will depend largely on the details of airflow. The role of small droplets containing the virus is not yet known, and their concentration could be quite high at the end of the day, even if everybody obeys the rules. Now, what about student behavior? So on August 16th, President Schlissel said he was a little insulted by the suggestion that our students will not act responsibly. So I guess President Schlissel finds reality offensive, but many of us have seen images of our students having a great time in recent days in large groups and without masks. They're wonderfully talented, but their social life is no different than at other universities. Now there's even a U of M tweet telling them to have parties with 25 people. I don't have the confidence that the university community will be safe. Never before have I thought that science denial or replacement of critical thinking with wishful thinking would take hold at the University of Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We move on to Suad Abdul Kabir. Suad, are you there?
Oh, Colleen, our next speaker was Rebecca.
Oh, I mixed with Rebecca. Thank you. Thank you. Rebecca, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. So I appreciate the big picture commentaries about the situation, and I'm going to speak on more of a micro level to help us understand the impact. And I'm happy for those of you who are in the position to teach online this semester, but there have been many assumptions that we're all in this position, and this is not true. This is why there needs to be a university policy that all classes should be taught online. So in my school, which is the Stamp School of Art and Design, decisions were made without a faculty conversation or vote. We were informed on June 23rd that all 33 of the first year studio courses would be taught in person or hybrid. Freshmen were told to either commit to in-person instruction or to defer for the year. So that's a big arm twist to get students to come to campus. Since that announcement, many Stamps tenure track faculty scheduled to teach these in-person or hybrid courses asked to be switched to online classes. Their requests were granted. So who's teaching the first year classes in their place? Lecturers. 29 of the 33 classes are now being taught by lecturers, 4 by tenured faculty. Last week, several of us at STAMPS pointed out the inequity of this situation, and the administration's response was to change all first-year courses to hybrid. They also changed the definition of hybrid so that, quote, it ensures that there is in-person student-to-instructor interaction throughout the semester, but it does not prescribe the specific frequency or nature of that interaction, unquote. Does this mean that instructors can choose to teach all classes online, or is there a minimum number that needs to be in person? This is unclear. When I asked this of our assistant dean, she wrote, quote, I would imagine many students would be surprised if there were only 2 or 3 in-person classes for the entire semester, unquote. This week, 2 lecturers told me they're afraid for their health this semester. When I suggested they only meet their hybrid class in person on the first day and then online thereafter, they told me they didn't think this would go over well with the administration and that as lecturers, they feel at risk of being penalized. These are both senior lecturers. In addition, our facilities staff is currently required to give in-person demos. These staff and instructors do not have the protections we faculty have. They do not feel safe speaking up. They're in fear of getting sick and dying. At least 4 University of Michigan employees died from COVID in March and April of this past year. 4 people died. To ensure the health and safety of all UM staff and instructors, all instruction should be online. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm very glad that I didn't miss that by overlooking you. Moving on then to Suad Abdul Kabir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I want to thank Kentaro, who helped facilitate the protest last week that I was able to attend. And I also want to thank the folks at Sakura who have put together this emergency meeting and giving us a chance to speak. I'm going to use my time actually just to share some information about a national strike that has been called by Professor Anthea Butler at the University of Pennsylvania. I want to share this information for 2 reasons. One of the things that, amongst the things that disturbed me and alarmed me with respect to the reopening is the UM Ambassador Program that is, sort of asking students to surveil other students, and it ultimately will lead to campus police and/or Ann Arbor police being used to, sort of censure or sanction students, right, who are violating the public health standards. And so as a Black person, as a Black woman, as a Muslim person, I'm concerned about that, right, and policing in general. And also because I think, as Kentaro mentioned, as a faculty body, we need to escalate. And so I think a national strike, participating in a national strike is a part of being a part of a national movement, but also part of the escalation in terms of really trying to push, right, for a true sense of faculty governance and shared governance at the university. So I'm going to read the statement that they wrote to encourage people to join the strike. And then I will put the link they have a link where you can sign up to get more information to participate in the chat. And I have 2 screens, so I'm looking at the other screen. Given the recent events of police brutality, most recently the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the murders of Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and many other police shootings during the summer of 2020, an intensification of the trend we've seen in recent years, we can no longer sit quietly amidst state violence against communities of color. We believe that it is of crucial importance for those of us in higher education to take a stand in solidarity with our students and the communities we serve. We also see the need to affirm protesters, workers for social justice, and activists who are crucial parts of making our communities better places. To that end, we propose a general strike for 48 hours to take place immediately after Labor Day on September 8th to the 9th. We believe that it is long past time for us to make a collective stand against police violence, particularly against communities of color in the United States. We will refrain from teaching and all administrative duties for this entire 48-hour period. We will use this time as a public teach-in about police brutality and violence in our communities from both historical and contemporary perspectives. We plan to use our social media platforms and all other venues available to us to get the message out. And then they continue with a link to sign up. And I guess I just want to say one last thing before I finish. I'm technically on fellowship. I'm on leave, right? I'm not teaching. The concerns about teaching in person are not something I have. I do live in Ann Arbor, So I'm concerned about that. And my spouse is a graduate student, so I'm concerned about that. But I just wanted to mention the fact that I'm not teaching because I think this is how important this is, right? I think supporting the call to go fully remote, but also using this as an opportunity to really, I think, galvanize faculty to play a more significant role in directing the course of the institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We call up next Mariah Zeisberg.
You're unmuted, Mariah. Mariah is unmuted.
So Mariah, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm unmuted on mine.
We can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. All right, sorry for the echo. I'm getting really good information, so thank you. My piece that I wanted to talk with is the concern about the policing. I think right now is a horrible time to be inviting Ann Arbor police deeper into surveilling our communities, and I'm upset at the idea that the administration is going to make such dangerous decisions with predictable consequences of noncompliance, and then we're going to bring a police force in to wreak who knows what on especially our Black and brown students and just community members. I just don't think it's safe to have police out there. I just don't see that it is. And so, but my awareness about police brutality is just transforming, and I'm learning more all the time, and this is not something that I have been involved in or committed. So I just wanted to see where are the efforts at U of M for police accountability? Are there groups working on delinking from the AAPD? Is there mobilization or politics or work already happening that anybody knows about? And if so, how can I plug into that? Because I'm not okay with this. I have the same concerns that have been expressed, but I'm really not okay with putting the violence of this. Yeah, I'm not even talking about armed. You know, that's what was. You know, I had an experience with the. Okay, sorry, I was just looking at the comments. The armed thing is not the issue. I have had several experiences this summer with both Washtenaw sheriffs and with AAPD where no guns were being used, but there was a very threatening, frightening, and violent attitude demonstrated towards the people of color that I was observing. So, you know, I think we're all, or people who haven't already been sensitized to this issue, there's nothing like what's happening in the world to sensitize us to. So I have had more than one moment when I've just, seen a police officer and a person of color and decided, like, I'm gonna stop and watch and see what's happening here. And in the several situations that I've seen, there was no weapon used. There was no firing, nobody was shot, and the conduct was totally unacceptable. Nothing I would ever want to see. They will now have campus. Okay, anyways, my question is, if anybody knows where there is activity happening around our relationship with policing and specifically the needs of Black and brown students, could you please help plug me in? That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mariah. Our last speaker actually at the end today is from the Police Oversight Committee, so we may be able to loop back around to what you've brought forth. We go now to Yopi Prinz.
Hello, thank you for calling this meeting, and it's great to see so many people here, way beyond a quorum. I am, as department chair, I want to represent some very specific concerns raised at our GSI training yesterday by students graduate students who are scheduled to teach in the fall. And as it happens, I am teaching a large lecture course with 9 GSIs where as the faculty member, I am automatically online, but they have to teach in hybrid formats for small discussion sections. So they raised 3 major concerns. The first is really having to do with a breach of trust. They agreed to hybrid teaching or in-person classes because they were reassured that it would be a public health informed semester and that it would be safe and viable to return to campus. But now they are increasingly concerned that the testing plan is insufficient. There's no contact tracing. There isn't enough PPE, unlike other universities where there has been much more proactive problem solving around this safety concern. So they are worried for their own health and for the health of their students. They're also extremely concerned about the safety of their students and think that appointing police-like units to enforce COVID policies is a terrible idea. It's dangerous. It's bound to increase tension. It won't actually help with enforcement. And the idea that this additional force and security presence on campus will accomplish more than testing and contact tracing is incredibly worrisome to them. For them, it's really also a concern that students will be blamed for breaking the public health informed semester. So they really feel solidarity with their undergraduate students. The third concern that they raise has to do with the particular burden of childcare and parenting when their schools are in abeyance or online, and trying to find a way to arrange for childcare. This is something that falls to graduate students, to junior faculty. They feel solidarity with lecturers and staff around these issues and are drastically in need of more support on this front. So I wanted to represent their concerns at this meeting beyond our faculty concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Ronald Larson.
Okay, I'm a professor of chemical engineering, and I'll just express my opinion, which I also expressed to our faculty in chemical engineering and asked for feedback. Those who responded, several responded, and all supported my opinion on the issue of in-class teaching. So we all felt that neither students nor faculty or instructors should be compelled to teach in class, and that those students and instructors that want to teach online for health reasons or concerns about the virus should be permitted to do so. But that students and faculty that wanted or desired the in-class experience should be allowed to make that judgment. In my case, I'm teaching a graduate class this fall with 40 students, and I polled them, the incoming students, to see which they preferred. And 36 out of 41 wanted to be taught in class. I was surprised by that, but my desire was to accommodate them. So with masking and appropriate social distancing, I'm going ahead with that. And I realize that that could be terminated if there's an outbreak. My feeling is that the students, from my perception, the students that I'm teaching, were tired of the talking heads that they had experienced as undergrads before coming to grad school, and were desirous strongly of an in-class experience. They may prove disappointed with that when they see that I'm masked and they're spread out in a big room. So I'm prepared to change, and probably will offer a couple classes entirely online so they can see me online and see me in class and then make an informed decision. But I feel young people that don't have another health issue are at low risk of death or serious injury from COVID and are responsible to make their own decisions, as am I, and whatever risk I'm experiencing, I'm willing to take in the interest of giving the students this option. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Sunmeet Pardwadan, who is the president of GEO.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Sumit. I'm a doctoral candidate in the philosophy department focused on ethics and the current president of the Graduate Employees Organization, like Colleen said. Thank you all for allowing me space to talk at this meeting. I'd like to start by expressing graduate students' appreciation for and solidarity with faculty members fighting against the university's unsafe and unjust pandemic plans and their continued reliance on policing. I'll start by saying GEO is frustrated, angry, and disappointed with the university, in all honesty. The university had a 4-month summer, and even longer before that, to prepare an adequate safety plan for our campus's reopening. And what did they come up with? They came up with a testing plan that is explicitly opt-in and has been denounced by public health experts in their own ethics committee. They came up with a plan without disclosing any robust public health models or analyses, giving us any confidence in their assessments, which GEO has requested multiple times throughout the entire summer. And they came up with a plan that does not include a universal right for instructional faculty and staff to work remotely. The university also had a 4-month summer, and again, even longer before that, to figure out how to support grad students on campus, because the impacts of the pandemic go beyond just the impacts on working conditions and safety. Namely, unlike other universities, Michigan has not offered an across-the-board funding and timeline extension for graduate students. That means that students in their last years who have had research delayed by the pandemic's impact are heading into a decimated job market with no guarantee of future university support. Unlike other universities, Michigan also hasn't allowed its childcare subsidy to be used for non-licensed forms of care like babysitting and continues to require age limits for the childcare subsidy. These are both crucial forms of support for caregivers in a time in which childcare centers are shut down or limited in capacity and K-12 schools are online. Simply age limits and licensure requirements don't make sense in a pandemic type situation. What's more, Michigan's International Center has not increased its staff and resources to the point that they can promptly, accurately, and comprehensively address international grad students' questions and concerns. This pandemic has created a lot of questions and concerns for international students in particular, and they've experienced conflicting information delayed by multiple days, incomplete information, and more from the International Center. And the list just goes on. The university has also had a 4-month summer to think about how to concretely commit to improving racial justice and decreasing the role of policing on campus in light of anti-policing uprisings across the country for months now. And what do they do at the end of those 4 months? They strengthen the university's ties to AAPD, creating police surveillance squads that will have disproportionate effects on Black students, other students of color, and other marginalized students. Our campus community deserves the right to a disarmed and demilitarized workplace, one that relies less on policing and more on community-based alternatives. I say all this so that you have a sense of what the graduate students' experience has been like in these past 4 to 6 months since the pandemic has started. GEO continues to mobilize aggressively its efforts towards achieving a safe and just pandemic response and a real commitment to racial justice. We really welcome faculty collaboration and involvement with these mobilizing efforts. So all of you, I'm asking, as in your roles of leadership within your own departments, in your roles as the faculty senate, in your roles as individual faculty, please advocate for graduate students in supporting these clear needs that arise from the pandemic. And also get in touch with UMGO if you're interested in helping in our mobilization efforts. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. To left, we go to next to Lisa Dish, I think Dish.
Okay. It's a little hard to unmute, as you guys have noted. So I'm a faculty member, full professor in the political science department with a dry appointment in women's studies. And I'm an incoming city council member on the Ann Arbor City Council. I don't represent my department or the city council here, but I would like to say that because I've been thinking very much over the last several months about the position of the university in the larger community, I'd like to say a little bit more about, expand on some of the things that Silke and a couple of other speakers have said. And thank you very much for organizing this meeting to give us an opportunity to speak as a community. So we live in the most segregated county in Michigan, and the pandemic makes us one community in the worst way. It does cross neighborhood lines, and it does cross economic strata. It is mobile in the way that people in the United States are not. It will sicken many of us, but it will have the most devastating impact on county residents who are the most vulnerable. They are essential workers whose paychecks do not reflect the magnitude of the risks they take for this community. The University of Michigan has made us all complicit with a plan that imposes risks on our fellow community members. And I would like to urge that to ensure the health and well-being of our sisters and brothers in the community, that the University of Michigan administration move all teaching online.
Thank you, Lisa. Our last speaker before we transition is Sarah Peitzmeyer. Sorry, Sarah, it took me a second.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm having some internet difficulties, so I'm going to leave my video off. My name is Sarah Peitzmeyer. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Nursing, and I wanted to introduce myself because I was recently elected to the Police Department Oversight Committee, and I'm actually a member of the committee now. And the committee is sort of the official way in which faculty, staff, and students are all supposed to have a voice in overseeing our Police Department. So we don't have jurisdiction over AAPD, but over the Police Department. When it was created in 1990, I think it was very progressive to even have an oversight committee. Now, though, we have very limited powers that are really around reviewing grievances. So we're working as kind of our first action item to increase the scope of the committee to offer some real oversight. But I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm on the committee to represent Senate faculty. And so please, my inbox is open if anybody has views or efforts that you would like me to know about that can help inform overseeing the police. Really open to hearing that and look forward to representing you and working with all of you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all 13 speakers who came forth today. I really appreciate how well prepared and thoughtful these comments are. They're giving us a lot to consider and a lot to think about. As I suggested earlier, we're going to take a 3-minute screen break per recommendations for health. And at that point, we will be not continuing the recording nor the transcript, and we are asking the press to leave. So I will see everybody back at 3:48 for an open conversation at that time.